Welcome to Office Hours, everybody. It's Dave and John and our special guest star, Tony Wilson, today. Tony is going to talk to us about the 5 finance value streams. We've got a lot to go through, and I want to cover just a little bit of housekeeping stuff for all of our attendees. So we're going to do about 15 minutes or so of just Tony's going to share, drop knowledge bombs, let us know what's what in his world. And then we're going to open it up to Q&A, kind of on a broad sense, where we're going to either chat questions in, or we're going to turn folks on. If you raise your hand, we will let you just go ahead and ask questions live during the event. We'll turn on your microphone so you can talk. And if you'd like, at that time, you can also raise your hand again, and we'll make you into a panelist. It's a little bit of a weird thing in Zoom. When you become a panelist, you get logged out and then logged immediately back in. So don't panic if that's what happens for you. But then we're going to chat for the first 45 minutes, and then at about 15 minutes till the top of the hour, we usually stop the recording to let our attendees ask anything they want, anything that they might not want to have recorded and posted on the Voyager U YouTube channel, et cetera, et cetera. So, yes.
I was promised music.
Yes, well, that's coming. That's coming.
Okay, sorry.
Here's what we're going to do. Without further ado, I want to give a quick shout out to my pal John and brother in arms. So he's our co-host and the owner of, and well, co-founder of Voyager U. And of course, I am Dave with BusyWeb, and we are a marketing agency in Minneapolis. So without further ado, I want to give you a brief introduction into Tony with a quip. And here we go.
Yes.
Right? All right. Tony,
that's the way to do it.
Fractional finance professional with a passion for people development and a hunger for continuous process improvement. When asked about his superpower, people I've worked with Tony will say, he made me feel known and important. He stewards that superpower to drive collaboration, tap into the collective intelligence of an organization, and ultimately mobilize transformative growth. Take it away, Tony.
Can I just say that was the best music intro, honest to God? You know, come on, those Gen Xers, were you feeling it? It's just boom, 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 boom.
I came really close to hitting the peg on that too. It was almost perfect.
Jeez, Tony. Tony, wow. I tell you, you come in with Axl Rose as your
seriously, man, I'm digging it. I am digging it.
Oh man, right on.
Great. Good to have you, Tony. Good to have you.
It's so great to be here. Say, John, I do have to give you a quick shout out. These headphones that I'm wearing are in large part because I was so influenced by what you have going on there. So I saw your get up and I'm like, man, I got to get me some of them.
They really help. I'll be honest here. So this week I turned 54 years old. And I'm told, the hearing starts to do some things on the south side of 50. And I got to be honest, I hear better with these, like kind of, all this ear stuff going on. Mm-hmm. Not only do I look cool and look like what I'm doing from a TV, radio, Zoom show, but it helps with my aging ears.
Yeah, that's great. That is great. Well, speaking of cool things, John, is it okay if I talk a little bit about some finance topics?
You can. We'd love to hear it. Our community is here to learn. Let's roll.
I love it. I'm going to try to figure out how to share my screen.
Okay.
And let me know when that pops up.
Is Axl Rose in it? A quip.
There it is. A quip. You guys can see everything okay?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Fantastic. All right, everybody. Well, today we're talking about the 5 core finance value streams. And you might be asking yourself, well, why are we talking about this? What does this have to do with me? Well, really, there's 2 reasons why I wanted to talk with you guys about this today. And the first one has to do with a really unfortunate stigma around the term cost center and how that is oftentimes attributed to a finance department. You see, in my experience, and also from conversations I've had with other finance professionals, there is this legacy way of viewing a finance team as merely being the place where we have our costs and there's not really much value in them. It's more of a compliance function. It's a box checking function. And I'm just here to tell you this right now, as we talk about the future of work, the future of finance is a value center, not a cost center. So boom. Yes, exactly right.
Lay it on us. Tell
So
us more.
there you go. So in order for us to be able to kind of reframe our perspective, I want to just give you a little bit of an insight by talking you through these value streams, because we're not just a compliance function. We're here to add value to a business. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk with you guys about this. The other reason, just practically speaking, a lot of people out here that I know that are in the audience, a lot of people are either familiar with or every day working in an EOS ecosystem.
We love the EOS. We love the EOS.
I love it too. I love it. And in my experience, I've just seen a lot of struggle. I mean, obviously, all of these have their own unique challenges when you go to implement them in your business. But one thing that I've seen a lot is a struggle as it relates to process, right? You get to that point where you have to actually put pen to paper and start documenting them and ultimately help drive your team to follow it consistently, right? And so when we want to talk about value streams, part of the reason why we learn about the value stream is it helps give us a framework to better document our processes. It gives us like a starting point, right, to document our processes.
Tony,
yeah, go ahead.
So, and I always totally interrupt and everything else, but it's for a reason. It's because it's a dialogue piece. So cost centers in the way you look at things in sort of the new world of work is, we're just going to get rid of that term. We're going to call it value streams. That's wherever it is, and just cut and replace, because that's a better way to think about it.
I think, yeah, I would call it a value center, because here's the thing.
Okay.
If your internal team, and this isn't just finance, this could also be HR, this could be technology. If your internal department is not capable of articulating the value proposition, there's probably some work to be done. Right.
So if you don't start thinking, there's some movable stuff in here, there's value. It's not just a line item of cost.
That's right.
It means you kind of not thinking creatively, are you?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. This is good. Big.
Yeah. And it's honestly, it's hard. It's hard to shift that narrative when for the longest time, and especially in finance, let me just tell you this right now, especially in finance, we wield so much fear, right? Because nobody wants to go to jail because they didn't pay their taxes. Nobody wants to go to jail because they didn't report correctly to the bank, or, so there's a lot of fear that's wrapped up, and we wield that. The challenge is, how do you change that narrative so that we're speaking the same language that the business is speaking, which is ultimately, how do we drive more value in the business?
I like it because you're talking, and Dave and I talk about this a lot, and that is the next 30 years of work is going to be redefining, but it's going to be far more based on value. It's all about value. What adds to growth? What adds to growth? What's adding value? Not just line item, accepted cost centers. It's all about value. And it's interesting. The narrative really isn't there yet, is it?
Yeah, that's cool. Right. Yeah. And honestly, I'll just tell you this right now, Dave and John, part of the reason why I love being connected with guys like you is because your business is literally to constantly talk the story of value. And so it challenges me to be a better, speaker of value in everything I'm doing in finance. So I dig it.
Cool.
So kind of getting back into here, the reason we want to understand the value stream is it helps us to approach our processes and a starting point for documenting our processes. The other thing is, realistically, if you've got bad processes or poorly defined processes, I can guarantee you they're going to start to crop themselves up on your issues list, right? So the tail end of what I've got presenting here, we're just going to walk through a couple examples of things you might listen to, you might hear crop up on your issues list. And then I'm going to show you oh yeah, it probably relates to this value stream. So without further ado, let me talk to you guys about what those 5 core finance value streams are. Now, within the 5, I kind of break it down into 2 buckets. Okay. And this is, every business is going to do it slightly different. So this is just my take on it. But the way that I look at it is, you've kind of got this one grouping that I'm calling finance operations. This is the movement of money. These finance value streams are primarily oriented around the movement of money, right? So order to cash is all about the billing and collections, everything soup to nuts in there. So it's dealing with your customers. Invoice to pay is everything having to do with your vendors and paying them to, either because they're providing you widgets or they're providing you service, paying your vendors. And then hire to retire is essentially the HR life cycle, right? Those are the three, I would say, the core finance value streams associated with finance operations. And then the other grouping of value streams is accounting, like the true blue accounting. I like to refer to accounting as not actually accounting, but financial storytelling, because that's essentially what we're doing. We're writing stories and then we're telling them to the business, we're telling them to the government, we're telling them to investors. But accounting is down here below. Acquire to retire, oftentimes we see that as a component of record to report. It's basically just like you're purchasing and getting rid of or disposing fixed assets. But sometimes if you're talking about like a asset intensive business, like a manufacturing company or maybe a trucking company would be a great example of this. If you have significant fixed assets, acquire to retire makes sense to kind of break out as a separate value stream. Record to report. Yeah, go ahead.
There's on A2R there, your subway token. I love these, look like subway. Heather P and Melissa Hepner in our community, they're really, this acquiring people side, they think about the new normal in that so deeply. And I think you'd find it interesting to talk to them about that, because they pick that apart too. It's like, it's not a line item, guys. It's strategy. There's value there.
That's right.
And if you look at it just through the money lens, you're going to be in trouble. So anyway, I don't know if they're on the show today, but anyway, they're good people to talk to.
Yeah,
Carry on.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, so just high level, these are your 5 finance value streams. So we're going to talk about them in the next slide, just a little bit more specifically. So, right, we talk about these as value streams because essentially what they are is they're a group of processes that are grouped together. They're organized together because at the end of that stream, they're essentially delivering value, right? So order to cash, it's the soup to nuts. It's customer places an order all the way down to we have collected from that customer. The customer is paying us essentially. There's obviously lots of other pieces in there as you go.
No, just 3. There's just 3.
Just 3.
You've got 3 arrows. There's 3. That's all. We don't want more.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it can get a little bit more complicated than that. Let's just put it that way. But when we're talking about like some key value, this isn't all the value, but this is some big pieces of value that's delivered in this value stream is working capital management, right? This is, hey, do we have enough cash to actually like run our business? I'll just tell you this right now. If you are not collecting from your customers in a timely fashion, you are going to quickly go broke, right?
And that's probably a big part of where a lot of companies got into trouble right away with COVID and when everything started closing down. And as soon as the cash dried up and everything went back 1 month, 2 months, that was a big issue.
That's right. That's exactly
Cash dries up faster than bills stop.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So big piece of value we deliver in the order to cash value stream, working capital management. Another big one is customer relationship management. Now, a lot of times when we're talking about working with a finance team, usually you envision a finance team as being a very insular group, right? It's very inward focused, which for the most part it is. But sometimes, depending on how you slice and dice the roles and responsibilities, sometimes it's your finance team that is directly interacting with your customer. Do you want somebody out there who is maybe making your customers feel like garbage because they forgot to pay on time? Not so much, right? So value, that's one of the ways that we deliver value in that value stream. Invoice to pay, again, soup to nuts here is the vendor is billing you all the way down to you have paid them, okay? Similar value here. You're also talking about working capital management and then also vendor relationship management. If we've got consistently, we're not paying them on time, or maybe we're just not responsive, it can tend to hurt your relationship with the vendors. And I'll tell you this, if you don't have vendors, you also don't have a business.
Right.
And you don't have referrals. I mean,
right.
Well, and when it's time to renegotiate, your rate's probably going to go up, right? Because there's the PETA tax on top of people that are tough to work with.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
That's a great
What tax
point.
did you call it?
PETA, pain
PETA?
in the
Focus.
analytics. Yeah.
I thought you were talking about the Greek bread.
Oh, that too.
That's great. But you're absolutely right. So finance can add value in this by making that relationship even sweeter. And then lastly, hire to retire here in the finance operations stuff. Employee is hired all the way to they're terminated and dealing with the soups and nuts. Or leaves, right?
Or bags it, or great resignates.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and so here we're just talking about a lot of the value that we're delivering here is legal and regulatory compliance, because that's honestly that's a big part of it.
Mhm.
And then just like vendor relationship management, customer relationship management, employee relationship management.
Mhm.
Nobody wants to go home without a paycheck. Nobody wants to be working tons of hours and not get paid. So
Right.
pretty
Well,
important.
that legal and regulatory thing is getting more and more complicated, especially in the fractional and or world that we live in now, where there's really no borders. I know we just hired our first California employee out of the Bay Area, and there's an entire world of additional things that we need to do in order to have them employed full time with us.
So my goodness.
It's a big
It's crazy. It's crazy trying to navigate the ever growing complexity of the legal and regulatory environment. So
Yeah.
Totally. All right. So that is our finance operations value streams. I'll go quickly through the acquire to retire and record to report. Nothing much to write home about here for acquire to retire, except for capital asset management is important if you've got a capital intensive business. Again, we're talking about maybe a trucking company, a manufacturing company, somebody who needs capital assets to run their business. But record to report, this is all of the stuff that seems like a black box for people who don't know accounting. But this right here is my wheelhouse. I love being in this value stream.
This is the one for you, huh? This is
the one. This is the thing I get so excited about. And I'll tell you the reason why. The value I've articulated off to the right-hand side, management insight, investor and creditor relations. These are things that I think from my experience, I've seen lacking in what's being delivered to the business. You're nodding your head, John. I'm assuming you've got experience in this.
Oh my God. Yeah. So when you think about a board meeting, just think about a board meeting. You know, so if you take it like, well, just get the numbers in there. Last minute, pull the report. There's no insight. And, you know, all I think about is growth. How do people grow? How do companies grow? And you have to have the story for whoever's deciding on the growth, whether it's investors or management, sometimes creditors. You know, the other things I'd say in here are boards today in the small business world, they get so involved at this level, and that's a good thing. And if you have the insight to bring, I get why you get excited about it. Because if you're saying, okay, these are the stories this is telling us on our path to growth. You know, and since you brought up EOS, what is it? The increments are starting from 10 years and then down to 3 years and then 1 year and 90 days, right? That's kind of the EOS cadence. Yeah. That's awesome.
And
I
if
love
you
that
want
too.
to grow and expand, right, you need to be able to tell those stories in a cogent way.
That's right.
If you're just like, I don't know what my numbers are, like, well, the Rick Brimicombs of the world are not going to entertain talking to you unless you know what you're talking about and you know where you're going. So incredibly important.
Super right.
Speaking of Rick, he and I were talking not long ago about something like this, Tony. And it was a business we were examining. And he had this really good insight. The business was showing, you know, they had not grown in sales that much. And it was a younger than 2-year business, and it was just kind of getting going. It just hadn't grown that much. And Rick is a very patient guy. He's like, listen, things take time to soak and everything. But he stopped everybody and says, I get it. Your per unit sales don't look that much bigger, but month to month, you're about 6% better every single month. So per unit doesn't look that great, but the percentage growth is like, do you know how many Wall Street investors would love to put their money on the barrelhead for something that's growing 3 to 6% each month? That's 20-some% per year.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's insight. That's insight. If you're just looking at like, okay, unit to unit sales don't look great, percentage, simple, but you got to have the interpreter to tell that story.
That's exactly right. And let me just add one other thing, because now I'm speaking maybe to the very what I call even smaller businesses. We're going to call them under $1 million in revenue businesses here.
Mhm.
Part of the reason why this delivers such little value is because they are obsessed with tax and regulatory compliance.
Really?
Oh my word.
That's where their time and energy is, huh?
Yes. And let me just tell you this. And I would say the people who don't necessarily have partners that are partnering up with them to help them expand their vision, those that are less educated about this space, they're going to be so hyper focused on tax and regulatory because they're terrified of doing it wrong. Understandably so. The IRS is a little bit scary. But like, I mean, it was perfectly articulated in a quote that still sticks with me. This person I was speaking with, they said, Tony, if it wasn't for the IRS, I would not keep books. And I was like, no way. Right?
God, I get it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's bad, but I get why there's that worry there.
Well, and especially if you're a small business, you have maybe one or two people that are responsible for the daily operations of the business, and or there's lots of stuff happening, right? I mean, if you're an entrepreneur, you probably have 17 hats that you're wearing. So depending on your personality, it might not be the most fun part for you to look at your numbers. And, it's incredibly important. And that's why, you need either fractionals, like members of our community are able to provide, like Tony can do, or somebody that can step in and just kind of give you that outside expertise to help you guide that. I mean, I run a marketing agency. We don't like numbers except for cost per click numbers and the reports and the lead gen, right? So, get us talking about financial reports, and it's the hardest thing that we have to do every quarter for our EOS reports in our VTO, right? So, but it's urgent. It's important.
Well, it's more interesting when you're talking about the insight, not the numbers. What do they mean? What's the story? What do they mean? What's the story?
That's where it gets interesting. Yeah.
It is.
Somebody likes collecting numbers for the sake of collecting numbers. And if all you had is a spreadsheet at the end of the day, who cares?
Yes.
But this tells us that we've got this growth trajectory, or we've got this opportunity, or this is what we can invest in and grow, right? That's when it gets fun.
Here's why we're scared shitless of tax and regulatory. Just I'll bundle it for you guys. So my brother was telling me this great. Some comedian did this recently. Maybe you guys heard this, but it's like, what other business does this? You owe me money. That's the IRS. Okay, how much do I owe you? I'm not going to tell you. Do you know? Oh, I know. I know how much you owe me, but I'm not going to tell you how much you owe me. Well, can't you just send me a bill? No. You've got to go pay a bunch of money, spend a lot of time, a lot of frustration, and all the way to when you send me your check, we're still not sure. You might have it right, you might have it wrong. That's why people are afraid of tax and regulatory compliance.
That's right.
I just bundled the whole situation for you. If you could fix it, Tony, that'd be great.
Working on it one step at a time. But yeah. And it's so funny, even as we're having this conversation, like I see you guys light up about management insight. And like, this is the power of changing the narrative. And this is why I'm so passionate about, let's change the story from finance as a cost center, this is a necessary evil, to no, this is a value center that is delivering exponential value, that's helping you to unlock everything that you're hoping for to grow and scale your business.
How do you do it, Tony? And maybe if you have more slides, you can go through them, but how do you do it? How do you come in and say, all right, I know you want to spend 90% of the time on tax and regulation. Tony wants to spend 90% of the time on what do these numbers mean? How do you do that?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Okay. Well, let me answer it in two parts.
Okay.
Because like the first part that comes to my mind is, how do you start off that conversation? How do you start off that relationship with that new client? I think that it starts, and the reason why I'm so passionate about EOS is it starts with vision. So often I see finance professionals, like really, really proficient, technically sound finance professionals, hopping in all feet forward, but totally miss the connectedness to the broader vision. And what ends up happening is it's like they just run themselves in circles. They're super great at coming up with that budget, but that budget doesn't tie into a broader vision or mission. So always step number one is I want to align to the visionary, to the integrator. I want to get on the same page with them and speak the same language. That's table stakes.
Mhm.
You know, another part where I see it have success, Tony,
Mm.
is speaking. God, it's like I should get paid by EOS. Honest to God, I plug them every single week.
Mhm.
But speaking of, insight. So if you're with a visionary, right, Tony, and you're talking about what do these numbers mean, what's really interesting, and I think where it really starts to take off is like, let's ask Dave. Let's ask Mary. Let's ask Joan. The other fractionals, they can look at the same thing. I'll give you a perspective.
Mhm.
And you look at Dave, you look at all that damn gray hair. Of course, he's got a perspective. He's learned some stuff.
Mhm.
But he's not even a finance guy. But he knows how to look for insight, and so do IT people, the Sean Lovitz of the world, the Bruce Rolls, the Steph Sheetas, all these independent people. They have all this knowledge, never having probably opened books. Well, some of them have, but you know what I mean. Not it hasn't been their core thing, but they can look at that and go, "Here's what I see." And it becomes collaborative. It becomes,
good.
this vision thing, not just between the money guy or the numbers guy and his insight and the CEO's insight, but what are the other contributors here?
Yeah, that's good.
It's a whole new world, baby.
Tony, I want to give you a chance to close up before we open up for questions. What do you want everybody to know before we start having them launch their inquiries at you and entertain their office hours needs?
Yes. I think I would just convey, if you guys took nothing from our time today, I would just convey, I would implore you all to change the perspective from cost center to value center. That doesn't matter if it's in finance or if it's in other historically cost center groups. That is where we can start to kind of reframe and really start adding value into our businesses by starting from a place of value center, not cost center.
Is that a big hurdle?
All the food that feeds your business, right? I do the same thing with marketing, by the way. Like everyone's like, well, I don't have enough money for marketing. It's like, you don't have enough money not to do marketing.
Yeah.
So unless you're really investing in your business, it's like, I want to run a marathon. I should probably starve myself. No, that's not how that works. You need to load up on some carbs. You need to have some pasta, right? And if you're treating your finance like a value center, instead of just saying, oh, I need to minimize, nobody ever grew their business by minimizing the amount of available labor or the amount of people that they could work with.
That's right.
Right. It's like, oh, I just want to choke everything off and then magic's going to happen. That's not how it works. So I would love to hear from everybody online. We've got 8 folks in attendance here today, some from across the pond, all the way out in the UK.
Boy.
Shout out to Nigel. And I know that all of you have finance concerns and issues and are probably thinking the same thing that I am on how do I reframe my finances and my numbers from a value perspective. So I'm going to turn everybody on now, and you can talk if you want. Fair warning, I'm not going to unmute you, but I'm going to allow you to talk. So if you have questions, this is your time. And this is, again, office hours. So go ahead, and even if it's just commentary, agree, disagree, we'd love to hear from you all. So everybody's live and able to chat.
And it's always hard. We got to sort of prime the pump. You know how it is. Nobody just jumps in here. So I'm going to start. Tony, what's the first thing you like to have people look at? Like, all right, I want to talk about a value center. What piece of paper should we exchange so we can start having that conversation?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Could you provide maybe a little bit more context just so I can kind of get on the same page?
Is it? Yeah, send me your books. Let me send you a questionnaire.
Oh, I see.
Let's do a quick analysis. How do you start? How do you just start?
Honestly, if I'm talking like from scratch, I've never seen behind the curtains or anything like that. It's like I said before, I always start with, talk to me about your vision for your business. Always start there.
Where do you want to go? Where do you want to grow?
That's right. Exactly.
Does anybody ever say, why do you want to talk about that? You're the
No,
numbers guy.
No. Here's the thing. This is why I love working with small businesses, is because every small business entrepreneur is so passionate about this vision.
Yeah.
I love it.
They're
more than willing to talk about it.
Yeah, they're dying. They want the input. They're dying for it. They're dying for it. Nigel.
Hi. Tony, thank you very much indeed for a very interesting perspective. Again, you have in the States, you've got a different regulatory and taxation setup than we have. it's funny. I went through this process about 7, 8 years ago. When I was paying for property, I was paying for offices, training rooms, staff, and all the other things. And it suddenly occurred to me when I did some analysis that I was having to work very hard to pay my staff. The government just brought in a new regulation to say that you had to pay their pensions as well as you had to pay for maternity and paternity holiday pay and stuff, which just added further financial burdens on me. And when I started analyzing everything, I found out, although I had these offices, it was more of an ego thing. The offices were that you're not a business unless you got offices, and they were prestigious offices. And then I worked out what it was costing me to put those up, and I decided I didn't want to employ anybody anymore because of the costs and taxes and everything else. And could I make as much money by not employing people and not having premises? And when I worked it out, I was spending more time out in the car traveling than I was actually in the office. So I decided to shut the offices down, laid everyone off, and advised them on how to set up their own businesses. And now I employ a couple of those as subcontractors. So I employ their business. So all I get off them each month is an invoice, and I just pay the invoice and happy days. I work from an office I built in my garden, which is much more friendly for me.
Cool.
And I have a 5-mile beach to go exercising and clearing my head and thinking about projects. But the thing was, we did this. My wife and I did this back 6-7 years ago. So when lockdown came, it was more about adapting to everything else. Adapting to digital and video and streaming and that sort of thing, rather than just being in front of people. But we've just had an announcement today that I got to be careful now because you're going to be broadcasting this, aren't you? Our power, the power that be in Wales, have decided that we're going to close off all the mandates and regulations and testing and all the other things as of the end of this month. So hopefully we'll be able to get, well, I've already seen about 4 networking events that have come up, and I've also been approached to speak at a couple of live events again, which is fantastic. But as you said, what I did was I looked at the things that you were talking about, and I said, well, how can I mitigate all this responsibility? How can I mitigate all this stuff? I don't want to grow the business because I can earn as much money working on my own, going out to see people, as I did before with other people doing stuff. It gets long hours sometimes, but I employ an accountant to do that for me. It seems to work out all right. It's interesting. You were saying about, I think it was John said that you've taken on somebody down in California. Or is it you, Dave?
Yep.
You took on somebody down in California, and they've got different regulations there.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
Every state has something different.
Yeah. Where's the lowest tax burden for businesses in the States? Which state has got the lowest tax burden?
There's a few of them.
Florida?
Yeah, probably Florida or Texas.
Can't you register there as your company? Go on, Tony.
Or no,
Okay.
You know this better.
Well, I was gonna throw out a fun fact for everybody who is here in Minnesota. Minnesota overall tax burden is the 3rd highest in the nation. 3rd highest.
we like to give back.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, no. I'm not saying you don't give back and stuff. What I'm saying is, from a purely from a fiscal perspective, wouldn't it be better to register your business in a low tax state, and then just have a branch office in Minnesota or wherever you are?
Yeah,
Can you do that? Can you do that and get
There's
away
a lot
with
of
it?
business owners that do that.
Yeah.
And how many? What's the one in the Northeast that does it? Is it Connecticut or no?
Delaware is a pretty common place to
Delaware.
incorporate.
Yeah.
The Cayman Islands are very good as well, apparently. I see Tony laughing.
Yeah, that's great. I love it.
I'm very big on moving to the Cayman Islands every year in Minnesota from about November until March, and then I like living in Minnesota again after.
Yeah, amen.
Yeah, Nigel, what? Just talk for a minute or two about the business that you set up, and have you made that you've moved from a corporate office kind of thing to a kind of a new normal, new economy kind of thing. What's your business focused on?
Oh, we're just focused on, like you, helping businesses to understand the digital world.
Okay.
It stemmed out of my wife was a web designer. I was an engineer and innovator.
Mhm.
And I said something to my boss at the time, which made me totally unemployable. And
Unemployable by him, but employable by many others.
oh yeah, others. And I thought, well, I've upset enough bosses in my life. It's time I sort of became a boss myself. And I thought, well, my wife runs her own business. I'll run my own. So I was helping her in her clients get seen on this newfangled Google search engine thing.
Yeah.
So she was saying that they're complaining that they can't be found. And back in
Mm.
98, 99, I started doing search engine optimization for them. I mean, the word hadn't been coined, or the phrase hadn't been
Yeah.
coined at the
Yeah.
time.
99.
So I found out how to do it by looking at lots of American websites,
Mhm.
and just went from there. And so we train people, we consult, we facilitate the learning of people within businesses so that they can actually move forward.
Nigel,
I-
what's the vibe? What's the vibe over there between not just fractional, but also small business in terms of embracing a more remote, non-office, independent sort of model? What's the vibe?
If you'd asked me that question 2.5 years ago, I would have said, "Oh, people like you to work in London, and that's where the pull is all the time." But with lockdowns and people working from home so much, the whole balance has changed. And that's why a lot of companies are offering remote working with popping into the office sort of
Yeah.
once or twice a month for face-to-face get-togethers in their pitches now for employees.
Yeah.
And the main reason for that is because they know if they want to go get hold of someone,
Mhm.
it's better for them to actually employ somebody who wants to work from home but comes into the office.
Yeah.
It's a funny thing. There's a huge jobs market at the moment, lack of people who, and people are being poached from other companies and competitors all the time.
Oh.
Headhunting is big business at the moment here.
Mhm. Yeah, it's interesting. It's pretty much what we're seeing here.
Yeah.
And
And-
it's spurring a lot of growth.
Yeah, and a lot of younger people have sort of been stuck in at home for the last 2 years.
Mhm.
And they've thought, well, how am I going to make some money and stuff? And they've all started setting up blogs and influencer sites, and they've all become internet marketeers, even though they know nothing, and influencers and stuff like that. They're trying to make money. Some of them are making money, some of them making a small living.
Mhm.
And so they don't want to go back to working in bars or restaurants. They don't want to actually go into an office. They don't want the commute. And I think this is one of the things, is the commute, especially into the big cities.
Oh my God.
The commute for an hour and a half, 2 hours in the morning, hour and a half, 2 hours at night. Suddenly it's just
Sometimes, isn't it something, you guys, we think about that, right? Like, we used to do that. We did that for 50 years as an economy. The things that we used to call everyday and normal, we look at now like, I can't believe we did that.
Yeah.
I can't believe that was normal. Whether it's a commute, whether it's, I can't believe I allow it to work in a toxic culture.
Yeah.
We just did this shit. It's
Right.
it's really unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, I think that's probably a big reason why a lot of folks are going fractional. They're sick of it. And I think, Tony, on your side, as we look at the 5 different value streams, it plugs in a whole lot better for a lot of business owners to maybe bring on a fractional or two that can fill the need without taking up all of the other resources, and or it lets you get the best of the best without investing 7-8 figures a year in that particular venture or that particular need, right? So John's a CMO for 5 companies. There's no way any of those companies could afford John full time.
Yeah.
Look at my wardrobe. I mean,
hell.
Hey,
high
saving you a
dollar here,
fortune
you
in-
guys. These are
You're saving a
some of the-
fortune in ties.
Yeah, these are a fortune in Target t-shirts. Brian
Hey there, everybody.
Brian is on the line.
I'm on the line. Yeah. Hey, how you
Brian?
doing, Jenny? Yeah, your wardrobe looks a little different than high school, but we were all like little minions back in those days.
You know,
Uh,
Brian, I have a son that attended. So Brian and I, for the listening audience, Brian and I went to high school together. And Brian, I have a son who's at our old high school. So what
There we go.
it all comes full circle.
I know. So what I was gonna say is, at the end of the day, I'm a solopreneur in the sense that, I just, it's just me and I like it that way. And, I'm a principal in one company where I'm an employee, but we had an office and we blew it up because like we always go to the client. We don't know who comes to the office. But what I wanted to say more to the point on this was, so one of the avenues I've gone down is using things like AppSumo to grab a whole bunch of different tech tools that make me extremely, performance oriented for a very low price. I mean, I'm literally a full service agency with every tool that I need. Because I do primarily market research and PR work, communications work, SEO, social, all that kind of stuff. But I also design questionnaires and all that. So, and do research studies. But I can do all of that with an army of tools and myself. Now, granted, I have an affinity for learning software and I like to do that. But that's a way I've kept costs to a minimum. I have very little hard cost. I office out of my house. I've got a nice office here. And I keep my equipment, computers and that kind of stuff up to par, but I really don't have expenses to deal with outside of, what I want to spend on. And when I say tools, I'm talking, $59 for a lifetime subscription to something.
Right.
So you find those that add value. And I've been pretty good at picking ones that actually don't get bought out or don't fall apart. Because you have to consider that with beta kind of tools.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of great tools out there that one can find if you need that, to round out your offerings.
Brian, because these will go to there's value to each of them, which is really the core of the conversation here. Brian, what for what you do, market intelligence, getting smarter about markets and those things that are wrapped in, are there a few tools you're like, guys, you should really look at these that you've found that really deliver a lot of value and come to the surface?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple I would say right off the bat. One of them, I tell everybody about this, is called Frase, Frase. And that's a content optimization tool for search engine results. So in other words, basically what it does is it scrapes the top SERP results. And then what you do is you go and you optimize your content. It color codes the words that you need to use. And then you can, and I've used this on all sorts of key phrases and keywords to get placed on the first page, even with minimal backlink work. I mean, it's just amazing. That's one. Another one is Closer's Copy. That's an AI writing tool.
Right on.
And it has a GPT-3 module built in, but it also has its own proprietary AI for writing. And it's got a sales-oriented one, a blog-oriented one, and a creative one. So that's another great tool. And then another one I throw out there is called WriterZen. And for keyword search kind of stuff and figuring out what key phrases and keywords you want to use, that's a great one. And there's all sorts of, on the research side, I use Qualtrics. I use, the usual Question Pro, Alchemer. I've got a whole cadre of things I use there. But I would say that there's some of those that I throw out there. Those are great tools.
Huge. So Brian, I went and found Frase and I'm going to put it in a thing, but anybody listening either live or like, find Brian, because and Brian, let's have you on because
yeah, that'd be super fun.
You're the kind of guy who's going to do some scraping that everybody else can just flat out benefit from. And so that would be awesome. So find Brian, if you wouldn't mind putting your website and stuff in the chat, that'd be awesome.
And that reminds me, for everybody that's on, if you want to network and connect with everybody else on the line, go ahead and drop either your LinkedIn or your email into the chat, and we'll make sure to connect up with you all. Would love to encourage everybody else that wants to chat. I promised I would close down the recording and leave about 15 minutes of unrecorded chats at the last bit. So if anyone feels like they need to chat and don't want to have this recorded in perpetuity, let me know. I think otherwise let's keep the conversation going.
Keep it going.
Online.
Yeah.
But certainly, why don't we do this? Raise your hand if you'd like us to shut off recording for a little bit so that we can entertain a good question. So Nigel has a question that he'd like to throw out offline. So let's give it another 3 minutes, and at 10 till the hour, we will shut off recording. So
Tony.
we'd love to hear from anybody that hasn't had a chance to chat yet. If you have specific questions for Tony and creating value streams through your finances, I would love to give you the opportunity here.
So Tony, talk about, Brian just probably dropped, he's going to drop probably 10 things that are going to show up as a cost center. Like subscriptions and things that he's using, but they're not a cost center, are they? They're value streams.
That's right.
In this new world of subscriptions and even these little small things, talk about how that gets thought through, how you come about, like, because that's a lot, right? He's like, I got $659 subscriptions, and God, the value is big, and it's just different. Talk about dealing with that a little bit, if you could.
Yeah. I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind, and this is something I'm actively always working on as I find new tools, because, you know, there's tons that are out there now. SaaS is everywhere. But it's always being so keyed into what is being freed up because I'm investing in this platform, right? So if we're talking about AI copy, that's kind of a no-brainer in my head. I'm like, well, what could I have done? Like, how much time am I now saving? And that time is worth something. So I would say, as long as you can demonstrate some degree of, you know, return on investment, even if it's a soft return on investment, I'd say it's probably worth it, and is worth making a statement in your budget to get it.
That's why the collaboration is key. Because what Brian's going to say, this is valuable, we need it, it's a cost. Tony and I might go, I don't even know what the frick that is.
Right.
But Brian's going to know. Brian's going to know, or Adam's going to know, or Nigel's going to know, or Lisa's going to know. That the user, right? So those functional leaders have to be at the table wherever they are, fractional or full time. So, well, I wanted to give you a chance to talk about that, Tony, because that's a big deal. The tool set underneath small business is different and always changing, and you really have to examine the value.
That's right.
Spectacular.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, I think in interests of the time for the recording, I do want to do a quick closeout and give a promo for our next couple of events. So coming up on March 11th, we have Billy Fetzner, who's going to be talking to us about some of the things that he does at Sugreel. Then we have Dr. Rachel DePaul, and Adam Ellert is actually coming up on March 25th. So look for lots more on team building and content coming up in the next couple of weeks. And just to officially close out, we're going to keep the meeting open, but we're going to stop recording. That's going to pop up on YouTube. But just for Tony's benefit, I do want to do a quick closeout. Thanks, Tony, for everything that you presented today. And
That's it. One